What if we assign the same key to all the locks across the world? What if we assign the same password to all the accounts of the world internet users? Sounds bizarre? It's stupid, right? I'm talking about the trend which is spreading like any other virus across the world. One world, one language. I repeat, one world, one language. You might be thinking, what's wrong with that? It would be much easier to communicate with all different people of the world where language is no more barrier, right? But let me warn you, at first sight, the pictures looks nice. But when we think deeply, language counts many more things. If we have one world, the idea of one world, one language, it is your identity and your privacy is at stake. To understand it better, let me take you back to the birth of very first language. How were people communicating? What was their like pre-language era? The ancient tribes were using their hands, facial expressions, some sort of signs as a tool to communicate. And that was perfectly fine. That was enough for those tribes to communicate. The biblical story of the Tower of the Babel narrates the same, where the whole humanity certainly spoke a single language. That was exactly the situation of one world, one language. Up to here and until here, everything looks fine. But then, what makes the generation of the creation of second language? What was the need to create another language? How does the second language come into existence? It is because more than the medium of communication, language is also a powerful tool of identity and secrecy. For multiple reasons, when these tribes got separated by land, by habits, or traditions, they were using their own language to establish their identity and to maintain the secrecy of their information. And over the period of time, the domain language becomes so rich, it got so rich that at some point there were approximately 7,000 languages spoken on this planet. Moving fast forward, it is the colonization which brought twist in the story. English was the spoken language in Europe with the Germanic tribe. Over the period of time, through technological, cultural influences, and scientific influences, English became the world language. Every third person in the world speaks English. New generation use English as a primary language to read and write. And this growing mindset of using one single language is going to end the heritage and very richness of the native languages. Okay, so how does it matter to us? What can we do about it? It matters to us because we are living in the era of technology, where identity and privacy matters a lot. If you care about your identity and your privacy, you should worry about it. In the age of technology, what matters is the data. What matters is your privacy, is information. Then comes the language. The another importance, another aspect of a language, that is identity. That is privacy of your information. In the age of technology, where data is the currency, data analytics of English or other native languages is much, much easy for the machines. If you are one of those using English language over digital age or over digital world, you are the easy target. Comparatively, it is much complex, it is quite complex to sense the exact context of the native languages for the machine. Netizens who are using English or social media are relatively easy to interpret and in return influence. Influence to buy their products, to use their services, and even to make them vote for the specific candidates. We are witness to some of the greatest scandal of our time in the world of technology, of selling and misusing our data. And that is exactly the scenario of using one single key for all the locks or setting the same password across multiple accounts. The monolingual world, one language, is a threat to our identity, privacy, and secrecy of the information. And in addition to the communication, privacy, identity, secrecy of information, language is an asset of valuable scientific and cultural values and beliefs and culture. Language in itself is a whole package of cultural heritage. The caveat of unseen is that every after 2 weeks, one language dies. And if this scenario continues, over half of the approximately 7,000 languages spoken on this planet may disappear by the end of this century. And when language is gone, the culture of civilization is lost to the world. For me, matter of the fact is that more than the caveat of unseen, it is the caveat of undone. Okay, so what we can do about it? This reminds me to the great Indian American entrepreneur who beautifully said there are 3 types of people in the world. One, the ignorers, those who see the problem and simply ignore it. 2, the blamers, those who see the problem and blame someone else for it. And 3, the solvers, those who see the problem and try fixing it. We chose our way to solve the problems, to be the solvers of the challenge. Exactly 20 years from now, that in early 2000, we started an initiative called the Global Language Heritage, a mission to safeguard the linguistic diversity, a mission to preserve the language, to preserve the native languages and dialects using people and technology together. Our linguists, domain experts, and volunteers are busy documenting information in audio, video, and text. Up to now, we have documented over 2 million words in 23 languages under 16 multiple domains. But preserving a language is just a half done. What matters the most is being understood and able to understand. Again, this reminds me to the famous quote of Mr. Nelson Mandela, who once said, if you talk to a man in the language he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. Learning a new language helps people to communicate with other cultures, to get used to other cultures, helps people to get to know other cultures and develop empathy and compassion. There comes our another project, the Global Language Networking, the digital platform which offers seamless and smooth transactions and translations among 23 different languages. Over 150 million users across the world are using our web apps for the translation, for the acquisition of second language, making it world's #1 resource for the references of Indian languages. It is one of the top-ranking websites for Indian languages. Anyone from any part of the world can simply download our free apps from the Play Store and start communicating with no language barrier. All we know, big things start small. Once it was my personal challenge to understand English as a language, to achieve my dream of education, because I was hardly exposed to English language beside one academic subject until age 14. Long story short, a kind professor lent me his dictionary, which then opened new window to the whole new world for me. All it begins with few words and phrases. And that small investment translated and transformed into a lifetime of interest, employment, and opportunity. You, anyone from any part of the world, can join me, us, to become we, the problem solver of the world. Let's join hands, come together to save the language heritage and to promote the multilingualism. Thank you.